Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought today we would have a chat about the next set of event vehicles for War Thunder. Obviously, Gaijin put out this community update and they put a ton of information in it. So what we're going to do, we're going to do a video on the event vehicles, which is this one, and then we'll do a video on the future update vehicles, which is also the other part that they mentioned, such as these two vehicles here. So we'll do a video a bit later today going through it. Because Gaijin has put out so much information today, this is more of kind of like a slap and dash, habdashery kind of video. So what we're going to be doing is doing it on stream and having a look through things. So we'll leave timestamps and stuff as always if you guys have some specific things you kind of want to look at. But in this one, we're just going to go over this paragraph, what it may talk about, and also what is probably going to come to the game. So, the first part, the next event is going to be a Soviet tank, which is for the main reward. Now, we've already talked about this today. This is the good old T-34 Partisan, which is this one right here. It's going to get an updated T-34 model, which is really cool. And that means all of the other T-34s will also get this updated model when the next update comes out. But there is also some other stuff which is happening, which they've added into the devlog too. So you can see right here, the standard T-34-85 is going to be moved to rank 3. So it's going from rank 4 to rank 3, along with this premium vehicle, the one that's coming in, the Partisan. And then they're going to add a new T-34-85, which has the STP-S53 Terran stabilizer. And this is going to come in at rank 4. So the T-34-85 D5T and the T-34-85 standard will be in rank 3 in the tech tree. The Partisan will be at rank 3. The T-34-85E will stay at rank 4. And this new T-34-85 will come in at rank 4 too. So you're not just getting the Partisan for this event, we also have confirmation that there's going to be another T-34 coming in the future, which is really cool. Now, this T-34, there is actually a War Thunder kind of forum article from Akagi, which talks about what the STP-S53 is. Basically, it is just a stabilization mechanism to give it a one-plane stabilizer. This was an experimental idea that the Russians tried on the vehicle, but the major problem with it, it was just too heavy, it wasn't really needed, and then also, you can see here, an interesting part which I will read out for you. Tank gun stabilizers picked the Soviets' interest in late 1920s, early 1930s. However, it was not until the 1940s that they were truly put to the test. Work began in the summer of 43 on a stabilizer for the T-34-76's F-34 gun. While the advantage of a two-plane stabilizer was already understood by the engineers, the complexity of the task meant that it would be more reasonable to keep a one-plane stabilizer. This resulted in the creation of a 1,300-kilogram heavy system that was never built. However, a refined version was built and trialed in a T-34 on 1944. And that is basically this system right here. So if we ever get a T-34-76 with a stabilizer, we'll know it's a bit fake. But the T-34-85 did have this one-plane stabilizer system. So yeah, basically the reason why it didn't really go forward is because the Soviets were looking at bigger guns by the time that this kind of came out. The T-34-85, by the way, is like a late war vehicle. You're talking like 1944-45. It's not as early as people think it was. So yeah, they were looking at 100 millimeters and also 122 millimeters at this time. So the technology came out a little bit too late, unfortunately, for the vehicle to be mass produced. So yeah, we're getting a bunch of different T-34s, not just in the next kind of event, but also going forward too. So let's go back and have a look at what the next event is going to be after that. It's going to be an aircraft event, so we're missing out the naval one, and it's going to be one of Kurt Tank's designs. So this is where it gets interesting. Who is Kurt Tank? This is Kurt Tank. Kurt Tank is a German. He designed a lot of iconic vehicles that you will know from the Second World War. The Focke-Wulf 190, which put a lot of fear into British pilots when it first turned up in the early years of the war, but then eventually got figured out. And then also the TAR-152, which was an interesting design, but not really enough of them was made. And then also even worked on the Condor, the Focke-Wulf 200. The Wikipedia for Kurt Tank is actually pretty good in terms of like talking about what he did. So if you are interested in it, it's definitely worth having a look at. But just like a lot of other Germans after the Second World War, Kurt Tank just mysteriously decided, I don't want to live in Germany anymore. There might be a few reasons for this. Not going to get into it in the video, but you can have a look for them yourself. Kurt Tank then moved to a surprising country. You may be thinking, oh, maybe it might be, I don't know, France. Maybe it might be Egypt. Maybe South Africa. Nope, Argentina. Just like most of the Germans after the Second World War, who were from dubious origins. So he moved to Argentina, and there he continued his design work. So after working heavily with Focke-Wulf, he then worked with the Argentinians to create the Pulqui II. Now, the Pulqui II was the first kind of jet aircraft that Argentina built with Kurt Tank, and it was designed to basically be like their next kind of fighter. You can see a picture of it right here. You also had the Pulqui itself, which was kind of developed before that. But this vehicle, the reason why it's so interesting is because it's developed off one of the designs which Kurt Tank came up with in the first place, which is this, the TAR-183 Hookerbane, which was supposed to be a simple jet designed by Kurt Tank for Focke-Wulf, but never really went anywhere. But he took that design, took it to Argentina, and the Argentinians were like, hey, we kind of want to build our own jet, and we have some nays, so why not we just stick them in and see what happens? And then they made a vehicle which basically resembles a lot of French jets from the 1940s. And Argentina did what most nations did at the time, where they went, oh, this was actually really interesting and kind of fun to do. Yeah, we stuck some cannons on it. Yeah, we used the nays, or, you know, I call it the nay engine just because it's fun to say, but it's the, you know, it's the standard British engine. And what ended up happening is they were like, oh, cool. We're just going to go buy from America because they have like these Sabre things, and these Sabre things actually seem pretty good. So even if we like build these things, they're not going to be anywhere near the Sabre quality. But this could actually be a vehicle that comes to War Thunder, the Pulqui II. The only real question is where do you put it in the game? And yeah, that would be a little bit odd. Then Kurt Tank took his expertise to a different country. Did he go back to Germany? No, of course he didn't. He went to India to meet the Maharaja. Kurt Tank then worked on this. This is the Marut, which was supposed to be India's kind of first supersonic interceptor / attacker / everything vehicle. You know what I mean? Like, it was a vehicle that was supposed to do whatever India wanted. They used the same engines or similar engines. They were basically the Orpheuses, which were... these were engines which are very similar to the ones that you find on the Nat, which we still haven't seen in game yet. These were also stuff, or they were also engines used on the G91, for example, and they put it into this plane, and India was like, yeah, we could easily make this supersonic vehicle. And Kurt Tank, you know, we have him as a designer, so therefore he can help out. They built a decent amount of these, and India did use them for quite a long time, but you know, eventually they were retired in the early 1990s, and then, unfortunately, of course, India stopped their domestic designs and domestic production for other stuff. So when it comes to Kurt Tank, a lot of people will remember him for his German vehicles. They'll remember him for the 190, you know, the TAR-152, stuff like this. And we even have like the interesting Focke-Wulf 190s, which were kind of like the prototype ones, the Focke-Wulf 190C that we have in War Thunder. But then we also have like the A's and the D's, and then obviously the 152s too. So, you know, it's probably not going to be a German vehicle. It's probably going to end up being a Pulqui, or it's going to end up being the good old Marut that you see here. Now, there's also another interesting thing about the Marut when it relates to War Thunder. Flashback 4 years. Boom. What is this, you may ask? This is a video that I made 4 years ago. This is the HAL HF-24 Marut Mark I user mission. This vehicle was created by one of the guys who has made a bunch of different vehicles in War Thunder, which is a guy called Nova 29. And this is the Marut itself that he designed. It wasn't finished at the time. I'm sure it's in a lot better state nowadays than it was then, because as you can see, like kind of from the video, it was a little bit blocky, but also I didn't have as good like bitrate back then because of the PC that I was using, but the model itself wasn't finished, right? But there was the general thing there. It had some anti-air missiles, it had some rockets, and also some cannons too, because it used the Aidens, at least in the game. So this vehicle, at least 4 years ago, there was a rough version of it. And why this is interesting, okay, is because Nova is the guy who also made a bunch of different vehicles for War Thunder. The TAR 154, the IR-81C, the Scimitar, the Arado 196, the Marut, which he says is finished, so who knows. The FFA P16 was also one of his vehicles, and the IR-93B Vulture, or Vulture, which is the event vehicle from last year that ended up in the Italian tech tree. He also makes a ton of camouflages, and at the same time, even made some Star Wars models back in the day. But yeah, this guy, if you don't follow anybody on War Thunder Live, you should definitely follow this dude, because he just makes a ton of really cool stuff. You can see here he's working on some Aramacci stuff from Italy, and also you can see here the IR-93, which he made, and the FFA P16. So that's why the FFA is kind of in the game in its setup, because, you know, he ended up building it. So that vehicle is finished. It's ready to go. So for me, I don't think it's actually going to be for the air vehicle. It's probably not going to be a Focke-Wulf. It's probably not going to be a TAR. It's probably going to be the Marut. Or it could be the Pulqui, right? Which we haven't seen heads or tails of. There was that one Argentinian vehicle that was on the dev server once, the Pucara. The Pucara turned up, but it was like a ghost plane. It wasn't finished or anything. So that is also something that might happen. So that is, you know, what the next aviation thing could be. The next one after that, obviously June, 6th of June, D-Day, invasion of Normandy. The Western Front takes off. The Western Front goes nuts, and the Allied forces start marching across the continent to take on Germany in their own soil. On D-Day, the landings in Normandy, Operation Overlord, of course, what it was called, there was a bunch of different vehicles used. It's mainly known, I would say, for its aircraft. You know, you have, of course, the paratroopers, you have the large bombers, you have the air superiority stuff, or the, you know, kind of cast things. When I think of vehicles for D-Day, I think of the ships and I think of the aircraft. But what Gaijin is doing for D-Day is they are bringing in an American tank. Last year for D-Day, it was the Churchill Avery, which was really cool. That was for Britain, of course. But now we have confirmation it's going to be an American tank. And there isn't really a ton to choose from, because America during that time really didn't use a ton of really like iconic, unique vehicles. They just used variants of standard vehicles that we already have in War Thunder. And I would be very surprised if it's not going to be just one of those. There wasn't like a ton of prototypes or anything like that. We kind of have them all that they were at least designing or producing at that time, like stuff like the T-34, the all of the kind of like American heavy vehicles, the T-30, the T-29, and also stuff like the T-95. Those were the breakthrough tanks that were going to be kind of designed to push into Germany and beyond if needed. But for D-Day, you had a lot more lighter stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see some kind of like Sherman vehicle here. So what are the options? Numero uno, Sherman DD Tank. This was a floaty boy. It was designed to take a Sherman and just make it be able to swim. Put a standard kit on it, give it a little bit of a motor so it could move in the water. The DD tanks weren't very successful because they needed very flat, simple, calm sea, and also at the same time, there was a lot of different mechanical things that could have gone wrong on them. And also at the same time, if they got onto the beach, they could also get stuck in the sand, which wasn't great. There was also, during the Normandy landings, they decided that they were going to land when the tide was some of the furthest out. So therefore, they wouldn't hit like the mines on the beach, or they wouldn't get stuck on kind of like the general stuff that Germany had set up. Or the Germans had set up to try and get boats stuck and other stuff stuck. So the Shermans had to like go such a long way down the beach to try and get to where they were needed, and a lot of the time they just couldn't. So yeah, the DD tanks weren't very successful, but when it comes to War Thunder, they're incredibly iconic, right? And that's what you're looking for in this type of thing. Another part to also mention here, I'm just going to switch over to War Thunder really quick. And I know this is kind of like a something that probably isn't something that's going to really matter, but if you actually have a look at naval vehicles and decorations, they have added a DD tank to the naval decorations for a long time. So you can see it right here. It's slightly different to the one that I was showing, right? But you can actually see the vehicle right here. It has like the big like hoops on the back. So the model itself, at least from like a low poly point of view, it's created, right? Like it's ready to go. So something to at least think about while looking at this stuff. There is also other ones though. Sherman 105 with the Bulldozer. This is specifically one which is from Israel. It's in an Israeli tank museum, but here is one being used on the Western Front after D-Day. So this one is literally just a standard Sherman with the 105 like we have in the game, but it has a bulldozer on the front. This was used for obviously like assault stuff, but clearing paths, pushing through. So we could easily just see like a Sherman with a dozer. They haven't added a lot of new dozers recently, and they haven't added really any dozers to World War II vehicles at all. Most of the dozers have been more modern stuff, like when you think about like the Soviet MBTs, you think about stuff like the Leopard 2A4, those are the ones with the dozers, not any American Shermans. So maybe this is why. Maybe they're saving them for event vehicles. Another thing to also kind of talk about is this one, the Crab. This is the flail tank. This one was designed to destroy mines which are under the ground. So what would happen is these arms would lower, and then the flail would rotate. Oops, sorry. The flail would just rotate, and the little balls at the end would just hammer into the ground. And the idea was they would find the mines and blow them up, which, you know, it was better for the flail to blow up than the actual tank itself, right? So that was the idea. It worked pretty efficiently. You also have a few other of like Hobart's funnies. You have stuff like the carpet laying tank, if they decide to do that, and also stuff like the Zippo. So the Sherman Zippo is a vehicle, which is what it says on the tin. It's a Sherman flamethrower tank. Now, the only issue with the Sherman flamethrower tanks is I don't think there's one which still has its main gun intact. Because one of the things that Gaijin said when adding stuff like the TO-55 and also the Churchill flamethrower tank, the Churchill Crocodile, they wanted to add flamethrower tanks that could still kind of defend themselves instead of them just being flamethrower tanks. And I'm not sure if the Americans made a Sherman like that. So this is probably less likely because I'm pretty sure the flamethrower was set up out of the main cannon of the vehicle instead of in another area. The other one is straight up just enlisted. And I know this is probably some of the most boring options because it's something that we've seen before, but it's something we can't forget about, right? So in enlisted, they used to have the Invasion of Normandy campaign. They added a few historical vehicles, such as the Jumbo. Did you know that the Jumbo wasn't actually present in Normandy? Weird, right? The Jumbo actually came into service at the end of 1944 into 1945. So yeah, the Jumbo just wasn't used there. But they do have one in enlisted, which has a bunch of decorations on it. It's a premium one with a bunch of like sandbags and fuel tanks and all this stuff. So could be that. Could also be this, the M5 Stuart, which has like the little teeth on the front. So therefore it can push through things to, you know, make sure the tank doesn't get stuck on stuff. So for me, like this is an option too. It's not a great option, but you know, it's there, it exists, and it wouldn't really take a lot of work for them to be able to put it into War Thunder. So for the American D-Day stuff, I honestly think it's just going to be like a Sherman tank with a modification, and I'd be very surprised if it was anything else. Then we have this part, and there's not really a way of kind of like working out what this is going to be. Like it just says it's just going to be a naval vehicle for a naval event. And I mean, the last like few naval events, they've kind of copied a vehicle that is already in the tech tree. This event is going to happen late June, maybe early July, depending on how long the D-Day event is. Well, actually, no. There's going to be a 1 month gap without an event. So that'll be when the major update is, by the way. So you'll have the D-Day event, and then you'll have the major update after that, and then you'll have the extra event. So this will be during July. And what will happen during July is you'll have the major update that's come out. And they said in this one that, look, there's going to be a next major update that will be bringing in some superior, iconic, big, vast, and yottabyte ships. Very weird names to use here. Very odd descriptors. And that might be because these actually stand for something. So superior could be Stalingrad, couldn't it? Iconic could be the Iowa. Would be surprising, but it could be. Big could be the Bismarck. Vast could be the Vanguard. And the yottabyte could be the good old... I've completely forgotten his name. Yamato! There you go. Good old Yamato. So, could be all the big bangers at once, right? Now, what they usually do is they usually have a naval event which is around one of the new vehicles, right? So, imagine with the French, you had the big Dunkirk that came in, and then they added the Strasbourg after it. Then you have stuff like the Baden, which was turned up as well, and also the Alcyon. So there's all of these different vehicles which are very similar to the tech tree ones. So I wouldn't be surprised if with the July event, they do something like that. So what if the Yamato is coming in the next update, and then in the event after, they had something like the Musashi? Who knows? It's a possibility. It's also something that's very hard to tell. So don't take everything with a pinch of salt. So that's looking at the next event vehicles. If you have any thoughts, make sure to stick them in the comments below. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time.
I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.